We're almost a third of the way through Battlefield 6 Season 1 already, and we're on the eve of the brand new Eastwood map launching, which is one that I'm actually really looking forward to. It's a map that I've only played for about an hour and a half, but I count myself lucky because I really enjoyed those 90 minutes or so, and I think you guys are going to enjoy it when it launches next week. It certainly feels like a map that's had more love put into it than the previous Season 1 map, Blackwell Fields, that's for sure. However, in this video today, we're going to talk about something a bit deeper than just the Eastwood map, because despite the updates that went live just a few days ago that addressed some major concerns with the gunplay and weapon bloom in Battlefield 6, they fixed some issues like the IFV insta-locking air vehicles and more. The devs at Battlefield Studios, they're not slowing down. The team is going full steam ahead on more changes and fixes that are in active development right now and will be arriving alongside the new Eastwood map on November 18th. I've got all those details right here in this video, so go and drop a like on this video right now to support it in the almighty YouTube algorithm, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already for more Battlefield 6 content. Blackwell Fields wasn't my favorite map, but Eastwood is a banger, and I'm going to be posting plenty of content on it and Battlefield 6 moving forward, so don't miss out and help push us towards 1 million subscribers as well. Right, let's get into things then. First of all, we're going to talk about more weapon tweaks, your favorite topic. The Battlefield Studios team recently put live a bunch of fixes for weapon dispersion, or weapon bloom, as the community's been calling it. That has placed the mechanic into a state that the team intended it to originally function. Now, this upcoming update with the Eastwood map is going to make some changes to how the mechanic works more generally. Essentially, bloom was bugged at the launch of Battlefield 6, and now it's fixed. And now that it has been fixed, the team is going to make it work in a different way in response to community feedback since launch, as well as data that's been gathered from people playing the game for close to, 7 weeks now. There's going to be a small tuning pass that's going to reduce how quickly weapon bloom and recoil builds up during sustained fire. Now, you might have adapted your playstyle since Battlefield 6 launch to include a lot more tap firing at range in order to counteract the weapon bloom and recoil. It sounds like the devs have identified that this is an area they'd like to adjust, lessening the need for you to burst so much at longer ranges and allowing you to keep the trigger held down for longer before you feel the impact of bloom and recoil. The adjustments to weapon bloom specifically are across the entire selection of weapons in Battlefield 6, and when it comes to recoil, most of them have received an update. The idea with this change is that the devs want to make weapons feel smoother and more consistent, especially at longer ranges, which is where currently weapon bloom and recoil really feel like they can take over, and they lead to you missing far more shots than you land. Now, this to me overall sounds like a good change, and hopefully it's going to bring some of those outlier weapons back into people's choices in multiplayer. There are several weapons in Battlefield 6 right now that are simply not worth using because of their unmanageable weapon control at longer range. The devs have said they're going to monitor how this change goes once it's live with the update, and I have seen a few people express some concern that reducing bloom and recoil further than its now current fixed position, we're actually going to risk taking Battlefield 6 too far back in the direction of a previous Battlefield game, Battlefield 2042, where every single weapon, regardless of category, was able to beam people at range, and then every weapon just felt the same. They didn't feel unique at all. So we're going to have to see where this lands in a few days' time once we all start playing the Eastwood map. Next, and arguably one of the most important changes coming with this November update, is a revert of the aim assist for controller players back to something extremely close to the open beta experience. This is something that we spoke about quite a bit in a previous video. There are a lot of controller players in the comments stating that they were looking forward to this, as the updated launch settings hadn't really made a noticeable improvement for them, instead making the game feel worse, with aim assists that tried to scale the strength depending on the zoom of your scope, but that all but removed any impact of muscle memory when it came to aiming, and it created some insane aim assist snapping moments that then became impossible to control after that initial snap. Now, the devs heard all of that feedback, and as I mentioned, they will be returning to values, albeit slightly tweaked, that very much mimic the open beta settings for Battlefield 6. Now, when the update goes live, infantry aim assist settings in your settings will reset, so your aim will almost certainly feel different on November 18th when you first play that first match. So keep that in mind and then see how you go. For me, as somebody who hasn't used a controller for like any meaningful length of time over the last 12 or 13 years, this is something that I'm sort of sitting on the sidelines for and just looking in on. But that doesn't mean that I'm any less interested, because I do think it's important that everyone playing Battlefield 6 has a good experience. And since launch, controller players have been saying that things haven't really been great for them. So hopefully this change sets things back on the right track and people start to get comfortable with aiming and aim assist in general for this game again. And it is worth remembering, because I know aim assist is a hot topic. Sometimes it's an inflammatory subject for people. Battlefield 6 does have crossplay, but when you matchmake, the game is always going to prioritize your input. So if you're on controller, you're extremely likely to be put into a controller-dominant lobby. By and large, you're going to be playing against the same input that you're using. There's going to be further changes to the challenges and assignment system in Battlefield 6 with this next update. The devs have made significant changes to this in the last patch already. That really sorted out a lot of the more problematic challenges. But there are, of course, several that still remain either bugged, not tracking properly, or have just got outrageous completion assignments for it. So descriptions and tracking for other challenges and assignments will be adjusted, so you can actually make proper progress on some of these things now. And as I said before, some of the goals have been reduced to such a point that you should be able to get these challenges done a lot easier compared to launch, simply because it's now been so long since launch that they need all of these elevated progression paths to kind of end, and a lot of the items that are part of it are needed for pretty much normal Battlefield 6 gameplay. So I think the devs just want to get those items that are in the assignments in the hands of players, so they've made the assignments easy. When it comes to lighting in this next update, expect further changes to the ones applied in the previous patch. You may be familiar with the SOVIS filter in the settings for Battlefield 6. If you've got no idea what that is, please go into your settings right now and turn that thing on. I almost guarantee you're going to see more enemies from it, thanks to this edge lighting effect that's enabled when you turn it on, helping to get soldiers to stand out from darker backgrounds. Now, this change that's going to go live in the next update, more emphasis has been put on the lighting when a soldier moves between interiors and exteriors. That's where we get that really harsh light transition currently. Feels like you're being blinded when you look out of a window, and then you step out there and it takes forever for the lighting to readjust. This is something that players have been giving plenty of feedback on since the launch. Maps like Liberation Peak and Operation Firestorm are the real culprits. So it's good to see the devs are taking it seriously and they're applying some weighty changes. This is actually an issue that Battlefield 5 struggled with for quite some time, and I do remember the devs back then being quite slow to address the issue. That's a stark contrast to right now in Battlefield 6. The team seem very receptive to feedback for this game, which is awesome to see. The Battle Royale map, Fort Linden, that's having more locations added to Portal, so players are able to create custom experiences using those smaller positions on it. You might have seen a few YouTube videos already, people playing on the golf course area of the Fort Linden map, set up as this large conquest map with vehicles, multiple capture points, and just generally a much larger player space compared to some of the official Battlefield 6 maps. I do think the devs are keenly aware that the launch maps for this game weren't on the large side, so having more of these larger spaces in Portal is great to see. However, I think I'd almost prefer it if the devs themselves took a few of these Fort Linden locations and just turned them into larger maps and then added them into the official map rotations, rather than just leaving it all to players in Portal. Portal has been a bit of a disappointment so far, with all of that XP bot farm BS that kicked off almost as soon as the game launched. It just gave me flashbacks to Battlefield 2042. And the devs finally have a handle on that situation, which is good, but the attention that Portal could have gotten has massively fallen off due to it not really being handled properly and reactions happening way too slowly towards issues that almost anyone could have foreseen. Really disappointing that Portal wasn't handled with more vigor at launch, but hopefully it can make a comeback with more awesome experiences made by the community as well. So those are your highlight updates coming with the Eastwood map on November 18th. We'll of course get patch notes closer to that time with smaller updates and fixes that will be applied to it, but those are your highlights. But there's more. There's a whole list of other changes coming in a December update for Battlefield 6, as well as changes currently being considered for future updates, but they aren't locked in yet, and changes being considered for the RedSec Battle Royale mode as well. So let's get into all of that. Firstly, the December update, that's going to introduce a limited time snow conversion of the Empire State map as its major content beat, but there are a few other changes being lined up for it as well. A vehicle balance pass is coming. Details are pretty scarce on this one, but it sounds like an all-encompassing update that is going to touch almost every vehicle in the game to really improve their interplay and smooth out some of those bigger outliers to make vehicle combat far more consistent across the board. Breakthrough is getting some adjustments. Yay. This mode is a shadow of its former self in Battlefield 6. Several of the maps will be adjusted in the Breakthrough mode to improve balance between the two teams and the overall flow of the mode. An example that we've got is on Mirak Valley. There will now be fewer vehicles available for people to use, and the capture zones will be adjusted for the flags to help attackers make progress and not just get stuck in the first sector. And then the Rush mode is getting some improvements as well, thank goodness. Similar to Breakthrough, Rush may be the worst it's ever been in the Battlefield franchise here in Battlefield 6, and this update doesn't appear to be doing too much, at least on face value. MCOM placements on Manhattan Bridge and Liberation Peak are being adjusted to create smoother attacking routes and more engaging objectives. Absolutely zero mention of the complete lack of space between defender and attacker spawns. That's pretty disappointing. Has anybody actually played Rush on Blackwell Fields, by the way? That first set of MCOMs, literally the first ones, who designed that? The attackers spawn at the top of the hill, the defenders spawn behind one singular house, and it takes all of 3 seconds for both teams to see each other, and then the defenders, like cattle to the slaughter, get shot as they run down the hill almost completely out in the open. I genuinely cannot understand some of these design decisions. The Rush game mode is getting basically zero love in Battlefield 6, and it's kind of a shame to see, really. It's my favorite game mode, and it's being destroyed. So those are the highlight features of the December update. Now I've got some under-review elements that we might see changes for in the future. In general, map design and size. The devs hear the feedback that currently maps aren't quite big enough for everyone's liking, and the pacing of the game is faster than previous Battlefield titles because of those smaller maps, and it's got a much shorter time to action. Barely any downtime between fights on some of those small maps. The teams say they are listening to all this feedback, and they will be working it into future map creations, as well as looking at what the community is creating in Portal. So if you're a keen map creator and you want to see bigger maps in Battlefield 6, maybe go into Portal and make some massive maps, and then the devs might make some in the future. Player stats are likely to be expanded in time, with the potential for per-season stat tracking to happen in the future. Social play improvements are being looked into, with particular regard to how to make it easier to get players to group together and join in with their friends. No explicit mention here of larger than 4-player parties. The devs are likely covering their back so they don't promise something now and then find themselves unable to deliver it in the future. That's kind of smart, but it's nice to see they are working towards something like that in the future. Hit registration and netcode are being monitored and worked on, tied into updates around the time to death and time to kill that could potentially come in the future. Also, dying around cover is a big issue in Battlefield 6 right now, and the devs are working to resolve that. The vehicle ecosystem is being worked on in its entirety, with further updates planned around making sure they fit well onto different maps and modes, more so than they currently do. And UI and menu improvements are being worked on, and this encompasses basically everything. The settings menu being cleaned up, the flow of equipping skins and cosmetics, and even finding the right community experiences in Portal with more ease. And then lastly today, we're going to talk about some improvements that are being considered and worked on currently for the RedSec Battle Royale. Audio performance is a priority issue for the devs. They know there are issues that need to be resolved. They are aware of memory issues causing sounds, like footsteps or vehicles, so pretty important ones, to occasionally not play consistently. I can tell you right now, this is not occasionally. This is every single round of RedSec that you play. Optimization of the audio is being worked on, so we'll see improvements in the future. A solo mode for the Battle Royale is being worked on. That's good news. I'm really looking forward to playing that, with particular detail being paid towards the pacing and the difficulty of the mode. The devs are aware that with classes being baked into the current Battle Royale experience, playing solo could be quite punishing, and they want the solo mode to remain rewarding. The devs are considering a casual Battle Royale mode, including bots. That's not a mode for me, and I'm not really sure you need one, considering there's no skill-based matchmaking in RedSec. But hey, maybe the data is suggesting a need for it. Perhaps people just want a really relaxed experience. in the Battle Royale, so having that as an option, I guess, is a good thing for everybody. The speed of armor plating and the amount of downtime it forces upon a player is being looked into. The devs want to maintain that meaningful tactical choice between plating up and getting more health before re-entering a gunfight versus rushing with less health overall, so this is something that may be changed in the future or may be left alone. And lastly, tank availability on the map. The team is experimenting with the amount of tanks and their placement on the Battle Royale map as a whole. So that was a lot of information. So to distill it all down, essentially the devs are 100% listening to player feedback, and they'll be implementing changes across the November 18th update with the Eastwood map, the December update with the snowy Empire State conversion, and potentially more after that as we close out Season 1 and look forwards to Season 2. So, pretty exciting stuff for Battlefield 6, I've got to say. And it's great to see so much communication coming from the devs too. We may not always agree 100% on what direction certain changes will go in, but that's obviously going to be the case with millions of players playing this game. But I got to say, it's just great to have a dev team who are open to communication and talking about all of these things. Thanks very much for watching. I'll catch you all next week for the new Eastwood map.